Express yourself. Hello, and welcome back to the Feminine Expressions Talks, where we invite the wisdom of women and rediscover the feminine ways. My name is Antje, I am your host, and today I'm here with Jennifer Ann. And I have not actually met Jennifer, but a friend of mine invited me to her ancient women's gathering. And I couldn't go, but I find it very, very interesting. So I got in touch with Jennifer and she answered my call. So today we want to hear her story. Hello, Jennifer.
Hi, Anja. Thank you for inviting me. It's an honor to be here and to talk about these topics.
So to begin, would you like to introduce yourself with a few words so people know who you are and what you're doing?
Sure. My name is Jennifer Ann. On internet, people will know me as Jennifer Ann Sings. That's my website, and so people find me on Facebook and Instagram, all these things. People have been getting to know me over the past years as a musician, workshop leader and teacher, as well as a ceremony leader. I've been working a lot with the cacao and traveling also a lot with that, as well as other ancient medicines from indigenous tribes. And I've been weaving all of these talents that I have inside me together and offering them while I've been traveling on and off for the past 3 years, pretty consistently, about 9 months out of the year. So I've been traveling quite a bit.
Nice. So let's maybe start in the beginning. Where and how did your journey begin?
Well, at the end, it begins, of course, as we're being born into this world. And once we discover the process of waking up, when we look back, we understand that everything is perfectly in order. That as I'm looking back, the big shift for me was when I started theater school, which was about 14 years ago, I think now, 14, 15 years ago. And this specific school in Holland was very focused on training the senses. So we were approaching theater a lot through movement and dance. And to do that, the senses have to be really trained. So you have to become very sensitive on stage to feel where the other players are on stage. And so you're moving with energy. And through that, I discovered Kundalini yoga. And then through that, I discovered trance dance, which is a form of dance with a lot of rhythms. And you're dancing with blindfolds on. And you're in a closed space with your blindfolds on, with multiple people dancing. And that triggered actually some really, really deep visions. Then that just evolved into going to ceremonies from indigenous tribes with ancient medicines, and that just went on and on and on. It never stopped. The development never stopped. And I've had moments where it was very separated. So it was ceremonies, then it was yoga. But yeah, before that it was theater. And at some point, I think it started in 2012, all these traditions started to merge together. So the shamanism and the yoga and the health. And now I'm also being trained in breath work. So yeah, it took me quite a while to accept that it doesn't really matter at the end which techniques or traditions that we follow. It's about really figuring out what resonates with our authentic self and following that path. And now with the internet and all the information is basically out there, I personally think it's impossible to separate yourself from all the different traditions that are out there. You can say, yes, I'm only going to be practicing this specific path, but in these times, you'll have to somehow or one way or another at least know about the other traditions that are out there, because it's, unless you're living on like a mountain totally secluded of any type of information and communication, there's going to be a merging and weaving of different traditions and techniques, which also happened very strongly on my path as well.
Yeah, I love that. I have exactly the same experience. I remember wanting to do yoga and wanting to be strict and straight, like the teaching tells you, but I would always go into dance. I would always like change the movement somehow. My body would just be like, no, but I want to do this. I'm like, no, but you got to stay straight now. And it's funny once you give into it, how your body knows. And for me, that was a big step to actually trust myself. Because in the beginning, when I started traveling and learning about things, I was very like focused to the outside and focused to what someone told me, and then trying to follow that somehow. But I realized like it's not my thing. So I had to realize that you have to take a little bit of this and a little bit of this and a little bit of this and a little bit of this, and in the end make it your own. And that was like, oh, am I allowed to do that? You know, it's like, yeah, it's interesting. I love that you express the same experience so much and the different traditions. So let's talk a little bit about those traditions. Like, what called you to it? What is it that I don't know if you can call it ancient knowledge, but I'm just going to call it like ancient or native or natural knowledge, maybe. Why does it call you? Like, what's the thing that you need basically from it?
Well, it came through having some difficulties in my childhood, growing up, in my upbringing, not knowing who I was or feeling supported at all. And then actually first going through the natural healthcare system in Holland. But from there, I wasn't finding any answers. And then somehow I found the courage to, follow my creativity, which at that point was theater. And I, in a way, got lucky because there was a new school that just started, and they were taking seriously like the worst students. And I considered myself as a horrible student. I always wanted to be on stage, but I was so self-confident. I was really overweight when I was younger. And so I had this huge shame around just everything that I was. I just felt ashamed of everything that I embodied at that point. But still, I knew that I wanted to be on stage. And then I moved to a new house, and there was a girl there, and she said, "Oh, I'm starting this new study, and you should go and check it out." And then I actually went, and they accepted me, and I was completely surprised. And I actually didn't understand at that point what it was going to change in my life. But getting on stage in front of other people and getting over that shame in myself was a really big thing to do. And in the beginning, like every time I would be on stage, I would go off and cry because I just was so ashamed of whatever I did. And I thought everything was wrong that I was doing. And so it was quite a long road to do that. And from that first theater school, I went to another one. And that's actually the school where they were working really strongly with the senses. And I started to get into ritual theater. So like how theater actually started, that it was also for entertainment, but it was also the reenactment of basically the spiritual messages that they would receive. So the shamans would actually have a certain type of theater, how they would play out the stories or would transmit information from their ancestors and from the unseen world. So I got interested into that, and that just kind of evolved into becoming very sensitive, cleaning out my body, watching my foods. I lost a whole bunch of weight, like 45 kilos in like 4 years. And that sensitivity brought in also my own connection to the spirituality, which I didn't know was actually there, that I actually had my own channel. I wasn't aware of that until my senses got cleaned up. And then I understood, like, okay, well, I have intuitive knowledge, which is something that's coming from a bigger source than within me. And I think, yeah, I'm pretty sure this took quite some years to understand the difference between, what was still coming from like a smaller sense of I, which people would call the ego, and then which was coming from a bigger sense of awareness and was connected to a wholesome view of life. And it took many years, and I think it's still like a fine-tuning even now, to understand like what's coming from a restricted self and a smaller vision that's actually leading me away of contributing to the whole of this creation. But over the years, it becomes easier and easier to understand the difference, and to train also that knowing. It's like, if you want to learn any topic, or let's just take, for example, an instrument, you want to get better at playing guitar, then you have to put in the hours to get better at practicing. And I guess this is also like that with any type of fascination or inspiration that you have from ancient knowledge or natural wisdom. It felt like I was getting answers. I was getting answers to problems in my life that I couldn't find through natural healthcare and psychology. It didn't make sense what these people were telling me. And so then I started to reach out to these ancient cultures, and they were giving me information, because this information was coming from an inner knowing, rather than looking outside and taking this from somebody else telling me, like, if you do this and this and this, then you'll feel better. And even as I was doing that, I wasn't feeling better. So for me, that wasn't the answer. And yeah, so I started to continue to search for truth. And I'm not saying that I have the full spectrum of truth in any way. It's an ongoing process. But I do feel that what the ancient traditions have been doing, and I'm talking from indigenous cultures to also like the yoga, but also like even the Romans in that sense had some ancient wisdom, and the Greeks and all these old cultures had certain wisdoms that we've been guided away from for certain purposes. And I don't like to approach it in a very negative way, because I think that everything has its place in this world. So the way that our culture has been developing, it has a purpose. There's also a lot of benefits that come from the culture that we created, the current exchange system, the knowledge, the life expectation, healthcare. We can, of course, see the negative side of that, but also there's a lot of beauty in that. And I think the time now is about the weaving, about bringing the best of all worlds together. And when we do that, I think that's when we really create something new. It's not dismissing anything that has happened, because it all came for a reason.
Yeah. I had a conversation this morning, it totally fits right now, it's interesting, about how the ego is so important too, because when you're a child, first, you have to learn about yourself. You have to make yourself a separate entity. You have to become an ego. And then throughout your life, you can get away from that ego again. But you can't, you have to, the step is important. And I feel like that's the same what we have in the bigger society somehow. We have to get away to come back, to like be able to look at it somehow. Yeah, I know. It just came into my mind. It's interesting that the conversation from this morning has like something to do with all this.
Sure. That's all synchronicity in that sense. Like, it is one big web, and themes that come up, they tend to carry on through days, or weeks, or it's like themes. So yeah. And then it's really important what you say. If you can never establish a self and a feeling and sense of self, then how are you going to relate to other people's selves, or how are you going to be a strong pillar within a whole? You know, like we have to have strong pillars that can stand on themselves to be able to be part of a strong whole over a whole circle. And they say the circle is only as strong as the weakest link, because the weakest link is that's where it's going to break. And yeah, so in that sense, we do have to invest in getting to know ourselves, becoming very strongly, to also then become that strong link within the whole.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just part of creating communities also.
Yeah, maybe let's talk about that a little bit, about the part of collaboration, because it's coming up more and more and more. And like single projects are not as big anymore, or like we grow bigger when we come together. So once we establish ourselves as a single pillar, then we can create so much more when we come together. And for me, it's always like a part of where I have to step away from myself again a little bit. You know, I have like this vision, for example, of something that I want to do. But if I want to collaborate with someone, if I want this vision to grow bigger, I have to give up a little bit of it too. You know, I can't like stick to this is my plan and everybody do my plan now. No, I have to kind of like listen. And to me, it's really, that is the most important process, listening. It's not about what everybody says, it's how everybody listens. And that's like, I experience that a lot in the women's circles that I make. It's like we practice listening to ourselves, listening to each other, and really just sitting there, giving space, giving time, and listening. And yeah, I would like to know a little bit about your collaborative experiences.
Yeah, I think that's a very accurate and also very beautiful description that you just shared with us. And I think this is the change of the times that we're in as well, shifting from a more male-oriented like leadership and collaboration, where when we collaborate, there's basically one leader that is, in that sense, like the strongest. And yeah, how to explain that? Strongest can be explained in different ways. But it would be more of like a pyramid, in that sense, that there's one person on top and then there's people underneath that support that one vision. And now with the feminine energies unfolding more and more, the collaborations are more around. And leadership is basically one of the pillars, and all of the pillars are just as important. So let's say that you would have a community that's a living community. Leadership can and is one of the pillars that are needed there, because I take this metaphor of, so if you're on a ship and you want to sail the ship from A to B, if there's not a captain, putting everybody in place and saying, okay, we have to go to the left now. So everybody, I don't know exactly actually how a ship, like what's needed, but the sails have to go up and now everything has to go that way. If you're not having one person guiding that process, then how are you going to get that ship in that direction? Because if everybody's just doing it whatever he or she wants, the sail, like the sails then go up, and one person wants to go to the right and the other person wants to go to the left, and like the ship is just going to be like in the middle of the ocean going nowhere. Which, if that's what you want, then you're achieving your goal. But in general, you want to actually go from A to B, so you actually want to go somewhere, and that means that a leader is a very important part of the team. But it's not more important than the people that are, putting up the sails. Because if you don't have those people, then the sails are not going to go up. So we're not going to go in that direction. And I think this is more of the feminine way of leadership, and it's not inherent only to women, because men can also lead in this way, but they have to have a different type of understanding of how collaboration actually works, and that each and every pillar has a very significant role and has the same importance as a leadership role. And not everybody wants to be a leader because it's a lot of responsibility. If something goes wrong, everybody's going to look at the leader, and they're not going to look at the person that didn't pull up the sales on time. They're going to look at the leader. So a lot of people think that they want this leadership role. But when you're actually in that position of leading and taking a lot of responsibility and risks and decision making, a lot of people actually don't want that. They're more comfortable in the following role, and they can be a complete leader within the following role, and they can be a complete, in leadership of what they're doing, that specific task. And so we're all made, and we're all coming with our own talents and palettes and colors. So I think the leadership role is really overrated, and it's really not, it's not a very easy position also to be in. Mm-hmm. People have a lot of projections on that. And it's like I said, it's more, rather than, I think there's a lot of projections onto it because it used to be in the pyramid where that was like the highest that you can go, but I don't think it's the highest that you can go. It's just part of the whole. And once you see that it's round and everybody needs to work together to actually make a ship sail into that one direction, and you really honor each and every position on that role, and you can see that you can be a leader within the specific role that you have, being it raising the sales, cooking, buying, making sure that the maps are there or that the equipment is all in check, that there's no holes in the boat or whatever, all of like these tasks that you can have. If you really honor that, I think that's also part of the leadership, to really honor each and every position and putting them accordingly to, honor that in a way, and keeping that balance within a team. Mm-hmm. And I think if people understand this concept, that's when you can really have really good collaborations. And so it's also about people that think that the leadership is more important, that they step off of that concept and step into full leadership of the role that they're embodying. Mm-hmm. Because then only then when they're taking leadership over their task, they're actually contributing with their complete being. And that's when you can create this balance within collaborations. And I'm noticing quite some difficulties coming up with different collaborations that I'm running into, because people that have a following role, they also don't feel that they have to take 100% responsibility for that following role. Okay. And they still keep thinking, but the leader, like if something goes wrong, I'm just going to put it all on the leader, rather than taking responsibility for their own tasks in that sense. And I think this is something that we're doing together now, like clarifying what are collaborations, what does it mean to be a strong community, how is it to take responsibility, why is it not only the responsibility of the leader to take responsibility, but why is it that each and every single person part of a collaboration has to take responsibility, take care of their talents, really put it into work. And this is, I think, a time that this is changing, and it's a super important time, challenging time as well, because there's a lot of communication that has to go around to share these visions that we have. And this is actually one of the visions that I keep sharing in every community that I've been going to. I've been talking about this because you can see also that leaders take, they misuse their power as well, and this is why people don't trust leadership, or they just want to put all of the responsibility on them, because you've had all these distorted relationships within collaborations. And it's up to us now, and I think especially as women, because we understand this concept, I think, in a more natural way, because we work more with the spiral energy and the circles, and the men have more of a deliberate, strong, straight energy, and there's nothing wrong with that. But when these energies merge, it takes some time and it takes some effort to meet each other, like in openness. Yeah.
Thank you so much for talking about the leadership thing, because for me, I got really, really confused the first time I heard about feminine leadership. I thought like, what? That just doesn't fit together for me somehow. So it's really wonderful to get this different view on it, because I'm thinking, like, for me, leadership roles change in a way that there's not just the one, that there can be several people leading different parts of a project. For example, you have responsibility for a part, and then there might not be the one person that overlooks everything. It might be a council that meets and then overlooks all the parts. So you have responsibilities really like separated, or not separated, but they're kind of like individual, and then they come together, and the coming together creates the whole project. So not one person can do, I mean, that's like basically the entire, nobody can do all that at once. But yeah, it's very interesting to think about it in that way, that the leadership role is not on the top of the pyramid anymore. I really like that picture, that the leader gets a different role. It's like, and yeah, it's totally difficult for them probably right now to see themselves in a different role, because we have like this long history of leadership and of like, all the misuse basically. And I really like that. So I would like to know a little bit more about your project, like a little bit, please.
I just first want to say, I want to give a quick response to what you just said, because you have this beautiful image behind you, and the misuse that you were talking about. It's like, so in that sense, the leadership, how it was that the leader would be outside of that circle that's behind you, and would tell, okay, now this is the technique, I know best, and you have to do it this way. But the leadership of this time is, the leader is in that circle, weaving together with everybody else, not telling them what to do, but showing them how to do it, and making them part of this whole of that weaving. And rather than just talking their talk, they're walking their talk. They're expressing it through true leadership, which is showing. And this is, I think, with the indigenous tribes also, what I've learned there is that the leaders in general, it's getting a little bit distorted also right now as I'm experiencing it from time to time, but in general, they are showing the people. And if you want to learn from them, it's like you go there and you observe and you watch. There are no like textbooks, like we know them and we have to read it. And then if you know this and you can like take a test and it's like, oh, now you're qualified. No, they ask you to do it in real life. And then we can actually see, because it's not anymore about just envisioning, because there's an endless stream of thoughts and ideas. They're truly endless, but it becomes really strong once we put them into action and actually create the vision. And then it's tangible. Then we can hear it, see it, taste it, feel it.
I love that.
And that's the new leadership, the people that are actually doing that. And this is what you're seeing in the world, that are like the people that are supposed to lead us are not actually giving the right example. So people are changing,
why would you follow someone if they don't do what, that doesn't make any sense.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's interesting. I have this experience with my women's circles. Like in the beginning, I was really kind of like, oh, I don't want to be the leader here. But now I understand myself much more as a guide. I'm walking the same way, and I can tell you can go there, but you can also go there if you want to. I'm just showing what is there to explore, and everybody goes their own way. And that makes me feel much more confident too, because I don't have to have all the answers. I'm not here because I have all the answers. I'm here because I have the questions too. And I just throw the questions in the circle, and then whatever comes up, and everybody comes up with their own answers. And that's like really how I understand my role in there.
Yeah.
Like, much more as a guide. I like that.
Exactly. And the thing is that we do need boundaries. You know, we do need a container which these experiences can happen in, and that we can feel safe to explore the boundaries and then discover something that's authentically, you know, inherited to how we feel. But if we never have that container, then how are we going to research the boundaries that we have, or how can we research what really resonates with us and what doesn't? And, you know, it's as simple, I take very simple examples, like our physical body is a container, and there are definitely boundaries to our body. You know, this has a shape. And because of this body, we can have these experiences. So anything else in this world is also built in that way. And I used to have a lot of difficulty with boundaries, and I thought that everything had to be free, and this rebel kind of thing. And there's still a rebel inside me. And I still like to really research, but it's impossible to do without boundaries. Because if we don't know what the container is, we can never understand what we're researching or where we're going. And I think leaders, in that sense, one of their tasks is to actually provide that container. Mm-hmm. And you just follow whatever resonates with you, because some people will set a certain type of container that doesn't feel good to you. So you won't resonate with that, and that won't be a place where you can research that correctly. And so this is why we have free will, and yeah, we can go to all these different places. This is a thing that's a really big privilege in our culture. We're both from Western culture. I also grew up in Europe, but here in the US, where we are also both now at, this is a really, really big privilege. And I just returned from Peru, where people seem to have less of these opportunities like we have here. And I think that we forget that also a lot of times, that we are really free to have our own choices of how we would like to live our lives, even though we think that we're stuck in something. If this is a feeling that whoever's watching this has, I'd really like to invite you, if you're watching this if you're in a Western culture, to see what is that mind thing that is keeping you stuck, because the opportunities are endless in our society. To invite you to go there, ask the right questions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, it's really good to sometimes look from the outside. Like, I have the same experience. Once I left, my home Germany, when first time I left a lot. Once I really got to somewhere where it's like, I went to Africa and to Asia first, and then later to South America, and now I ended up here. But I remember the first time coming back from a long, long, long journey, and it was so different looking at everything. It was like really opening my eyes to all kinds of things. I mean, in the beginning, I just saw everything that was wrong with the society I lived in. But then, I don't know, it's like memory changes with every day. You know, it's like every new experience changes also what's in the past. So like slowly, I would see the things that are actually there, and not just the ideas you got about everything, you know, but you actually learn to appreciate all that you got, and then look for all the things that may be missing. But it's okay, you know, some things will always be missing and some things will always be good. So it's kind of like balancing out. And for me, it's always like, I've realized I have the choice to think about the things and to interpret the things however I want them. I can always find, and I have this from my dad too. You can always find a positive thing in everything. It's possible, you know. It's like, and even if it's 3 years later and you look back and you're like, oh, that's what that was good for, you know. I had this long teaching and learning journey, and this is where it took me. And then in the end, it's like, oh, thank you, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And to be more grateful. That's like what I always find in the US. It's like, you got so much space here. You got like all, you know, I come from crowded Europe where everything is like packed and all the people are all together, you know, and then, I feel like people, they don't even see it. They don't know how to appreciate it. And I'm like, wow, there's so much space, you know, wow, you can really breathe and everything's so big. And wow. It's like, it's lovely to go somewhere where things are different, just to see how they can be different. I really think that. So that brings me back to the ancient knowledge,
Mm.
how that is different too. Yeah, do you want to speak a little bit about what's your idea with the with that gathering that you're organizing? I'm super
Sure.
interested in it.
Yeah, so I just transitioned from Holland to the US, and my father's here in the US, and I'm spending some time with my family here. The transition is slightly bigger than I anticipated on, and it's really asking me to root. And I am going back to Europe to finish up my breathwork training in April, but then I'm going back for about a month and a half to go to Europe to conduct different projects and workshops. It's going to be quite quick, so it's going to be June, and probably right after the half of July, I'm going to be going back to the US. And I didn't know, but my focus is being asked to be here in the US, so to start new projects here. And yeah, I thought that I was going to work more in Europe as I was here, but it feels like my energy is too split. I just arrived in the US in November. So yes, I did start a bunch of projects. One of the events, the first event that I'm doing is in Amsterdam in an old church, and it's called Roots Rising, which is interesting because the US is asking me to root, to rise. But what we're actually going to be talking about and what you're referring to is a gathering that I'm co-organizing with four women, so including myself, we're four in the core team. And it's called Ancient Women Gathering. And this is about tribal knowledge connecting to the Western society. And in Western society, we tend to consume a lot. So what's been happening over the years is like these people from these ancient traditions, they come in, you sit with them, you take it all in, and then you use it in your own life. So we had some different intentions with this gathering. We thought, okay, we don't want people to just like sit back and just be consuming. We want it to be interactive, and we want to invite, in this case, women to come together and feel what it is to work as a tribe, to be part of a tribe, and meaning therefore that we ask questions to ourselves, but also to others, and that we understand that it's not that we're just taking knowledge from a different tradition. We are also gifting our lives to these women. And so it's an exchange. So to change that mindset first, that we're not just consuming, we're participating. And this is what tribal and community living is about. And then for how things kind of evolve in my life is that people keep asking me a certain thing. And then at some point I start doing it. And one of the things is like they wanted to work with ceremony forms. And they were asking me to do that just with women because it's always mixed, and the mix is great. And I really believe in the mixing also of men and women. But it is truly different when we understand our true feminine essence as female. So this hasn't really been, at least in Holland, there hasn't been really a gathering that's just been with different tribes and then include just women and ceremony. So I initiated, I started to reach out to some sisters that I know in Europe, and then it came together. So first the tribe of the Honey Queen, the Kashinawa. There was a woman organizing a tour for women, that because that tribe is rising, the women are rising. It's been mainly guided by men in that tradition. The ceremonies, the traveling, it was all privileged to men. And she's now bringing women to Europe to share the part of the women. So I said, hey, I've been wanting to do this women's gathering. Should we come together and see what we can do? And she said, yeah. So then we started having meetings. Then this other sister came and wrote me that she was interested in collaborating. And I said, hey, I'm working on this women's gathering. And she just in pelvic therapy and does more like body work. And she has other wisdom of like Mexico and I think it was maybe Tibet. Anyways, she was like researching different traditions. So she came in. And then this other sister that's working with this tribe called the Yawanawa also from Brazil. And there's one specific woman that has changed their tradition. I'm just shortly going to step out of it because it's such a beautiful story. Her name is Hushawu, and as a child, she started to drink the forest medicine. And this was actually only for men. And she was doing this secretly in the kitchen when they were brewing the medicine. And then she got caught. And they wanted to punish her, but then her teacher and the shaman of the village said, "No, we shouldn't. We shouldn't punish her. If her soul is wanting this, we need to ask her if she wants to walk this path." So rather than punishing her, they then asked if she wanted to walk that path, understanding that if she would choose that path, she wouldn't be able to play like the other children, and she would be like being trained. And then she said yes, and then her path started, and that she was the first woman since hundreds of years that was able to work with the medicine plant and also lead. And she's a singer, and she works with art, and she's really about empowering women and the strength of women to refine their authentic self and their voices and their art and express that freely. And so then she came in because I think I wrote her to ask if she had any ideas about location and if she'd be interested to step into the field of co-organizing. And then she said yes. And who's actually in town? Rushao is here. I'm going to ask her if she wants to be part of the gathering. And so now she's also coming. So we have 2 ceremonies. One is led by the Kashinawa, then another one by the Yawanawa. And then we have sharing circles where there's wisdom being exchanged between the different traditions and cultures. Plus that I'm going to be leading a workshop, and there's another woman also doing body work. So there's an integration day where we're going to just really be together as women and sit, share stories, work with the body, the breath. So yeah, that's then the whole gathering and how it came together. It was really, really guided. A lot of synchronicities were just all unfolding. Yeah.
Wow. I wish I could go now. That sounds so nice. Yeah, really.
It's not
I love
impossible.
that it's about giving back. I love that it's about exchange. Because that's really one of the things that I've been thinking too. It's especially in that thought of abundance. Everybody's always wanting their abundance. And abundance doesn't just mean that things come to me. Abundance for me means that I have enough to give back. That's my personal personal abundance theme.
Mm-hmm.
For me it's really we need to learn how to give back again, how to
Yes.
I think that's a really wonderful thought to end with, maybe. So thank you so much. That was wow, I'm very, very, very happy we talked. And thank you for everyone who was listening. And there will be links and everything in the post. And I hope to see you again soon. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.